Here I am in beautiful Norway. I've just been running. I thought I'd capture a little bit of the beauty here, although it's a little bit overcast. I wanted to introduce Wies to the podcast. She's someone who's inspired me immensely, but more importantly, she's someone who I see as focused on leaving the world behind a better place, leaving for the next generations a better world. And that's something I'm very passionate about myself, and something I think we all should share passion for. Ultimately, we're kind of sacrificing ourselves for the next generations as our ancestors have done. And I think it's a very noble cause, and I think she's doing great work. So I hope you enjoy the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so honored today to have Wies Bratby in the house, on the podcast, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, and I'm not going to waste any time reintroducing myself. If you're interested in who I am or what this is about, please just check out the first podcast. I spent a little bit of time right at the beginning trying to introduce the concept, and maybe you'll pick it up along the way. But the theme of the podcast is win building, and I've actually managed to find someone who has a company called Win. So that's pretty good. Wies, I'd like you to start by introducing yourself and a bit about your company and where you're at.
Nick, thank you so much for having me. I'm incredibly honored to get a podium to rant about the things that are important to me. So I'm super grateful to you for that. And as I said in my email to you, that's the reason I'm here, right? And not because my company's name coincides with yours, which I just think is a fantastic coincidence. So my name is Wies Bratby. I am the Chief Enthusiasm Officer, as I'd like to refer to myself, as a bit of a icebreaker. People, I used to be called the most enthusiastic monkey on the planet by my family. So I thought I'd introduce that in my title. At Women in Negotiation, right? Win, my business, which is a coaching and consulting business through which I help women negotiate their worth. And that is because I am on a mission to end the gender wage gap, basically. And so I do also some consulting where I help companies to basically leverage their female talent, if I have to put it succinctly. I don't know, what else do you want to know? I'm originally Dutch, which undoubtedly you will hear, but I married a Brit, hence the last name.
Good choice.
I now live in the Netherlands. Funny that, we can talk about that, my friend. So I do live in Holland again after almost a decade abroad. And I'm a very, very blessed and grateful monkey in life, I would say.
And you have the two little girls, like me. We both share two daughters, yes. Which is one of the reasons so yes, of course, it's not the reason you're on. The name happens to coincide with the name of what I'm doing, but in fact, I think some of the reasons I'm mostly passionate about talking to you is I'm extremely interested in how I can set my two little girls up for future success and ensure that they they hit the ground running into their adult life. And I think what you're doing, and we're going to get a little bit more into that, but what you're doing, I think is fantastic for women in general, but also, hopefully for the future of women as well. And I know that you've got two young daughters. You're a bit further ahead than me, but I'm sure that
they are.
I'm sure that plays on your mind as well. Like, how does their future look and things? So
that's definitely been a part of why, sorry to interrupt you, but that's to your point, that's definitely a part of why I started Win, is because of those two monkeys. It's this idea that I do want to leave this place better, the earth a slightly better place. I don't want them, when they grow up and they hit the workforce, right, that they have to deal with the same BS that we're dealing with today. The gender wage gap is an insult to anyone's intelligence, and I really hope that by the time that they start to work, that is not a consideration, right? It's not there. Yeah,
I totally agree. So I want to focus on a bit about how you started your company and how, and also I think it would be really interesting to hear your perspective on sort of winning negotiations and things. You're a lawyer by trade. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone to watch. First things first, I encourage everyone to watch Wies's TED Talk. It's excellent, and it also gives you a lot of more in-depth information to Wies as well. And she's got tons of great stuff out there online. She's also got Women in Negotiation website where there's lots of great information. And if you're lucky enough to follow her on LinkedIn, she's pretty cool as well there. so that's.
I go on rants. If you like rants, then
there's a few charged posts, but I like that. You stir up the pot a little bit to get some reactions. I love it. But looking at your business and how you decided to sort of set up and just sort of reflecting on that, how did you decide sort of the strategy of how were you going to approach this? How is this going to be what you did? And, you know, when you were looking to become an entrepreneur and set up this company, what was your sort of considerations for how do I make sure this is a success?
Oh man, there's so much that comes into that story. Well, it started off with me not believing that I was an entrepreneur. I was a good girl who worked really hard for other people. And although I had some examples in, you know, my vicinity in terms of family members, etc., who started their own businesses, it never seemed something that I could do. So I had to overcome quite a few hurdles there. But the reason that I ended up doing this in the kind of the shape, right, in the form of my own business was really because there's nothing out there to support my mission. So my mission, right, to end the gender wage gap was I guess a combination of my two passions. One is for negotiation. I'm a massive geek. I've always been obsessed with negotiation, which is why I ended up in law and, you know, doing that sort of thing, so to say. And the other passion that I have for women empowerment, and that kind of came together when I realized that women needed help in this space, right? That there was a big need for support in how to have these uncomfortable, as I see them, conversations, support there. And so when I started digging into that and started digging into the research and saw how much work there had to be done, I thought, well, surely there's a platform somewhere. Surely there's somebody out there doing good stuff in this space, because there's such an overwhelming need. I literally have never in my life spoken to a woman who said, negotiation, no, I'm good. I know that. Never, right? They're great negotiators. And they work in procurement and they do sales, whatever. They're great negotiators when it's on behalf of other people, but never for themselves. So when it's about negotiating on their own behalf, that's where they struggle. And that's where, as I said, it's 100% score when it comes to need or support being needed there. And so when I then started looking, it turned out there was nothing, like nothing. There wasn't any help in that space. And so I thought, okay, I guess that means I have to do it myself. So it wasn't, it wasn't, you know how you have entrepreneurs who are like born entrepreneurs, right? It's their drive, it's their mission. That's kind of what they live for. It wasn't like that at all for me, not at all. More the opposite. It was more like, God damn it. I guess I'm gonna have to do this in this shape, right? So it really wasn't kind of a standalone drive for me at all. But I did realize that if I wanted to make a dent in the universe, if I really wanted to contribute to this thing, I had to do it myself. And so to your question of kind of what I did, I guess in preparation or sort of getting ready for that or getting ready to succeed, really interesting question. I think it comes down, I have a lot of flaws, like a ton of flaws, but I do one thing really well, which is that I'm wildly aware of what I'm good at. And I also know really well what I suck at, basically. And so I realized I'm really good at negotiation, obviously. I'm really good at coaching. I have a natural ability to connect with people and to see the best in them and then to help them see that, which I think is helpful. So I'm good at that, right? The content, I got it down, right? And I'm a geek, so I've read everything and I know my shit. What I'm not good at is kind of the business side, right? The marketing, the sales. I thought that was some kind of specialist knowledge that, I needed help with. And so I got that help. I got coaching on those bits that I couldn't do myself. Basically, I still get that help. And what it means is that I am working in my zone of genius. I'm doing the things that I'm really good at. And I get support for those bits that suck my energy and that I'm never going to be fantastic at. And so that, I think, works really well. Oh, and the other thing which I think plays into this is that I didn't kind of start on a whim of like, oh, I'm very passionate about something and I must then do that thing. I'm very big on following your passion, following kind of your, the thing that is calling your heart, right? I really do believe in that, so to say, or that being an incredibly strong driving force. However, you also need to put out what the world needs. I mean, if you want to be successful, you need to give the world what it needs. And so I did do some testing in a very kind of naive, happy, tree-huggy shape of thinking, do I have friends and family who need what I think is needed by the world, right? Or is it just me, basically? And so I randomly on a Sunday morning posted on Facebook, hey, friends and family, does anybody need, women, friends and family, does anybody need help with negotiation? If so, let me know. And with the idea that I would start a little coaching group and that I would kind of, try and form a program, so to say, to see if I could help them get better at this life skill. And then I got so much response that I formed 3 groups. So rather than just one group, I had 3 groups, and I led them through my very basic program, right, which had the outline of what it is today. It was in its core, it's the same thing, but it was like, it was much smaller, right? And I ran them through that, and they got some great results, and I learned some really freaking important lessons. And then I put it out there. So there's also, for anybody who's considering anything, I would say it's probably a good idea to, kind of check if the world needs what you are really excited about.
I think that's it's very interesting to hear, because it not being a sort of a textbook entrepreneur, as you said, it's like to understand that, also iterate through and check out what works here, what doesn't work. I mean, that's all about, checking your strategy. And a lot of what I talk about is kind of linking it into sport, like I'm constantly thinking about sport and coaching, and obviously in sport, you're constantly iterating on your strategy, because you've got to watch out what the competition are doing, but also what's needed to execute, to win, to get through to that winning formula or whatever. So understanding what's needed and also understanding how to iterate on that, I think is super important. So it's really interesting to hear that, actually. I think in terms of your what you said about your skills, and you're aware of your skills and things, I have to give you a compliment here, Wies. Your charisma as well is clearly something that you play to, and I think it's amazing. You've clearly got a lot of charisma, and you're very, very good at remaining on focus and on the subject, on the subject that you're on. But I was interested to hear you say about making the world a bit better and getting the world to a better place, and you've made it very clear what that is in relation to with women being empowered and the gender pay gap being eliminated. But what would you say would define your kind of like winning moments? Like, where will you see, because obviously there's, unfortunately, I think, maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I think in our lifetimes there's still going to be things to fight for in this. Like, it's going to take a long time to get completely level playing fields on all fronts. I mean, I hope it comes in our lifetimes, and I hope it's for sure with women. I think we can see a hell of a lot of improvement in our lifetimes. But I feel like there's always going to be someone or some people who are going to, unfortunately let us down. And so what do you, Nick, I don't know if you agree on that. I don't know if you agree on that, but I'm also wondering when you see the win, like, because at what point does win as a company turn into something different then? Does win turn into, something like, obviously if you get to that point, then the company is, I want
to retire. I want to like well ahead of like the normal, what is it, 65, whatever age range. No, I want to become superfluous. I want to become obsolete.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
my driving force. I do
Yeah.
not want to exist. I'm not here to run a business. I'm not here to make money. I'm here because I have a very strong mission, and I really hope to see it to completion. And when I was kind of objecting to what you're saying, my first question was, "Are you open to some coaching, Nick, on this?" Because what I would say, and regardless
Always.
of your answer, I'm just gonna give you some of my thoughts on this, and that would be that I mean, language really matters, right? And so when you're saying, well, I'm hoping to see the end of this, there is already, you know, what you're already inviting in is the prospect of it not becoming reality. And you could totally tell me that I'm a naive monkey and that, you know, it's naive or silly to think that we can fix this, but we absolutely freaking can. Like it's so much of a reality, and the business case for women empowerment and for gender equality in the workplace, right, is so freaking clear that I have full faith, not hope, but faith and absolute certainty that within the next maybe 2 decades max, that would bring me to, okay, I want
Almost
to
retirement
retire before
age,
that.
but you're still 20, 30 years
I'm
before
sitting here, I'm
retirement
doing the
age.
math, and I'm like, okay, yeah. Anyway, but is that we can absolutely fix this? I really do believe that, and there is a ton of problems in this world where I'm not so sure, right? There's a ton of problems that I don't know enough about to make an intelligent estimate of whether or not it's feasible to fix it. Let alone doing something about it, right? But I wouldn't know. But this particular square centimeter of the world and of our reality is something that I happen to know a lot about. And I'm here to tell you it is absolutely freaking possible to end this BS. It really is. And we don't, I mean, even 2 decades, we really don't need that much time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what are the strategies to achieve it? There is a ton of work to be done by governments and company boards, right? And I highly encourage all of them to do it, which is why I'm kind of starting this kind of side business, or sort of this side, I guess, path of where I'm consulting with businesses to show them that I haven't quite entered the lobbying field because it scares me a little bit. But
Might destroy
I'm
your
working
soul
with
as well.
yeah, there's that fear of like, holy crap, politics, I just don't want to go there. But when I'm looking at company boards, which is more kind of the arena where I'm more comfortable, I see that there is a real interest in the business case. Right, that we are slowly, but that we are starting to move from the tree huggy kumbaya, oh, the world should be better and we should all be fair to each other and women are equal, yes, so yes, right? The whole kind of principled idea. We're moving into, I think, a space that is much more motivating, at least within the business space. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but within business, it always comes down to numbers, right? What's the business case? Can you make the case for this? And we absolutely can in this particular field, or this particular, as I said, right, square centimeter of what I do. And so for that particular reason, I am very, I was going to use the word hopeful again, but that's bullshit. I'm very convinced that change, that wave of change, will gain momentum and will absolutely sort of convince everyone else, because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When few start seeing it and start implementing on it and, you know, taking action on it, then others see those results, they want some of that, and then, you know, it's kind of like it runs itself, so to say.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with Win. It's got everything to do with the data being there, and then the results being there, the results being a driving force. And so it's going to happen. I'm convinced.
I guess I'm not 100% convinced, purely because I was looking at the whole world and thinking there are places in the world which are hugely behind in terms of their, you know, in terms of progression of women and even women's right to work and things like that. I mean, so there's a lot of work to be done worldwide on this. And I guess my fear is societal and cultural change takes a long time for anyone. And I do believe and so I think it probably in the Western world, especially in places like Europe and hopefully in the US, there's an opportunity to see the change you're talking about within a decade or two. I agree there, because I think enough progress is being made and enough big conversations are now happening. And I certainly am, I'm also hopeful and optimistic. I mean, I'm not pessimistic about this. And as I said, I've got 2 girls. I really want them to grow up in a world where it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Like, I love it when I meet people where traditionally something about them would have been a big deal, and now it's like, no, it's not relevant to anything. It's not even that it's a positive or negative, it's just not relevant. So, and I love that, and that should be exactly the same for gender, and that's where I see it and how I strongly believe that. But I still see some societies, or quite a lot of societies around the world, being a long way away from the empowerment of women, to the extent with which I think your help, you're only one person. I mean, I think you can have you should have a bigger platform, and you should be able to have bigger impact, and I think you can, and I think you will, but still you're only one person, and it's a big world. there's 7 billion and there's half of them roughly are women, so there's a lot of women out there to work on.
Yeah, but it isn't just me, and it isn't about me, most importantly. And I think that is something that over the next couple of years, I think, will transform, where it's no longer a lone voice, but people are taking over, basically. And I think there's plenty of examples. I understand where you're coming from in terms of, societal changes usually take a long time, but then other things, they can move really quickly. If you look at what Greta Thunberg has done, or if you look at how a year ago we would think you'd be absolutely silly to be asking people to have 1.5 meter distance between them, and and still people aren't, not everyone's doing it, right? But it's like we are responding to the world around us in different ways, and sudden shifts can absolutely happen.
Yeah.
No, a much better example than 1.5 meters would be that even a year ago, when I was talking about working from home, I would get so much pushback from managers and CEOs that would say, yeah, but our people know, and it can't be done, and we must meet in person, and it's all about the connection that's happening in real life and face to face. Well, right? Less than a year later, here we are, and it turns out that Zoom is freaking, is very much capable of establishing connections, is very much able to do a lot of the things that before we said were so freaking vital to the survival of our companies. And now we're like, oh, actually, no, kidding, right? And so just as an example of how things can go really, really quickly. And I'm not saying that gender equality or even the gender pay gap, right? And so sort of that financial equality in the workforce should be the first thing on everybody's list. I do agree that there are societies that have a lot of other things on their plate, right? That they should be fixing first. It's just that when I am looking at the world as a whole, then I do have utter faith in the fact that we're moving very clearly in the right direction, and that change can happen almost overnight. Like, it can go really, really quickly. And that's what I'm hoping to achieve through, focusing on this business case, that rather than, ideas needing to take root, it's much more, okay, how much money can we make, and working with the way that companies think and aligning with that, right? That way, achieving the goals much quicker than if we're trying to win over their hearts and minds. Stop that. I don't have time for that.
I think that's a really important point, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I'm going to give you my impression of your company as well. So this could be really interesting if I get it wildly wrong. But I think on the one hand, you're coaching directly to women, groups of women, but also individuals on their own ability to impact their usually salary, but other factors within their negotiation, whatever that may be. But you're sort of coaching on the individual or the group towards their ability to affect change in what they can achieve. And then on the other side, you're trying to persuade companies and boards to consider the fact that it is much, much more economically sensible, financially sensible to empower and pay more to retain staff, and obviously the cost of recruitment, and that's in fact where we met. So we were both products of a company called EF Education First, and you were working in the kind of HR roles in that, and we're both, I guess, I was management in various parts. We're both familiar with how those budgets were working and how people were either negotiating or not negotiating. But I'm interested in that, like you've kind of got those two sides. Where do you see yourself and your business being most effective, and how do you see? There's two questions. How do you see the changes happening in the next couple of decades, if that big swift change is gonna come?
Well, so I started it. And I love your questions, by the way.
Thank you.
I started when looking at the data and realizing that if we were going to rely solely on politics and business to make changes, we were going to wait. What is it? World Economic Forum said 217 years or something a couple of years ago to get to gender parity. And I was like, I don't have time for that. You know, my kids will be dead by then. Like it's fairly, you know, like this it doesn't work, right? So we're gonna need to come up with something else. And I am just me. So my thought was, I can't influence organizations at board level at this point. I cannot influence governments at this point. What I can do is influence the people around me, right? The people that I know that I have access to, whose hearts and minds I've already kind of got, right, and give them the skills. So work with the individuals, which is why I started off coaching individuals, right, to have these conversations. What I've seen over the last couple of years as my business grew, but is that there is an interest at board level, you know, within companies to get this right. And again, not just for the moral and principled reason, but very much for the business case. And so I've kind of added that to my little plate in terms of, okay, my as I always say, my mission is kind of world domination of the idea that that women should negotiate, and that gender parity, you know, is what we should strive for. And so if that is my mission, right, and my mission is to end the gender wage gap, then and let me do what I can. And so for me, that means, you know, working with individuals and getting them their successes. And then on the other hand, working with company boards and working with governments at one point, hopefully, to lend my skills and expertise, right, to this subject, so that they can make informed and intelligent decisions about this. So what, you know, another part of this story, or part of this kind of what's the word, like this journey, has been that I started off wanting it to do it the other way around. So there's a little bit of insider intelligence, is when I first realized, right, these women need me, my friends and my family, and they were getting these lovely successes. I mean, small, relatively speaking, compared to what my clients are doing now, but still they were getting these successes through my program. And I realized that needed to happen. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to start with, you know, I'm going to go to schools, and I'm going to go to universities, and I'm going to go to governments, and I'm going to tell them, here's this thing, and I have this thing, and I have this knowledge. How can I support you in doing this? I tried. Tell you what, nobody was fucking interested. Nobody cared. I was like, sounds lovely, bye, you know, and then email goes dead. You know what I mean? Like I was getting nowhere. And it took me, I'm fairly stupid, so it took me a while to realize that actually I needed to turn it or change it the other way around. I needed to be successful in the work that I'm doing, so that companies were interested, so that governments would be interested, so that universities and schools, etc., would be interested. Because if I was just like, I'm not going to say a nobody, but if I didn't have kind of the data to back up that I knew what I was talking about, then it was swimming upstream. It was hard work getting them to care about this. Whereas now that I have all these successes, all these wonderful success stories, right? Not just for my individual clients, but for the companies that they work for, where they're just bringing this massive value. Suddenly people are calling me, right? They're talking to me. They're asking me, can you consult? Can you train us on this? Can you teach us about this, right? Which, yeah, is a much better way, I think, of everybody's interest or sort of everybody's energy, how it's spent. So I don't know why I'm sharing the story, but I think it's interesting to realize that, in terms of strategy, right, to kind of be mindful there, and the fact that potentially if you're finding yourself in a place where you're not finding a lot of response to what you're doing, it doesn't mean that your idea is terrible. It doesn't mean that whatever it is that you're producing, right, this services, thoughts, ideas, or products, whatever, that is inherently bad or not worthy in any way. It may just mean that your strategy sucks.
Yeah.
Like I did, like I did at the start. So yeah.
I think, a part of, exactly. A part of the process in my mind of my sort of philosophy on how to build a win, it's in the end, it's all about, it's similar, very similar to coaching. And you say you're a coach as well. I seem to always get coaches at the moment of my, so the next two I've got lined up are also coaches. But when you're coaching, you're setting a big goal, that what's the end thing, what's the big goal? And that can obviously change and redefine over time, but then you set interim goals. And it sounds a lot like whether doing it sort of formally coaching style or not, you've kind of come up with okay, so I want to get there, and then you jump towards that and then realize, okay, hang on, I need to regroup and build steps to there. I think that's kind of what I took away from what you've just described in terms of, okay, so we can't affect that change in governments and schools and businesses until I've got a platform from which to jump to that. Yeah. And I think that's really, it's really commendable that you were able to spot that and still continue, because a lot of people give up, they give up because
it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure this out. Honestly, looking back, I'm like, okay, that was fairly simple. I did not see this at the time. I was full of excitement and kind of energy, and I was going to change the world, and then nobody really cared. Right? So it was a fairly hard lesson or humbling experience, I think, to call up my old university, with this great big offer of like, let me help your students because it's so important, and for them to kind of politely decline and go, basically they've got better things to do. Like it wasn't exactly what they said, but I can read between the lines, right? My empathy's on. So I was like, okay, all right, new plan, right? Yeah. So this isn't working, but I do think that, learn from my mistakes basically, right? And don't waste energy on taking too big a chunk, or what do you call it, like biting off too big a chunk, or aiming so high and setting yourself up for failure that way, when there's nothing wrong with the ambition, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. It's just that it doesn't work as well, right? Yeah.
And I think also something just to your sort of point of not succeeding there, it's great that you didn't take it personally. And I think that's something I've heard you say a number of times in the different things I've watched and read. It's like people take things so personally when they get rejected for a job, or they apply for jobs that don't get any responses, and they take it personally. And I think not taking it personally, but reflecting, being mature enough or present enough to look back at yourself and say, well, maybe it's the way I'm going about this the wrong way. I mean, I'm sure there was a part of you that was, when your university rejected you, said, you're like, how can they not see the importance of this? It's about women, and it's
them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there was a part of you that was sort of struggling to say that, but it's good that you were able to step back and go, okay, let's approach this differently and get there a different way. I think that's, it's great.
One of one of the tenets of what I teach, or one of my favorite sayings is rejection is actually redirection, right? I don't know who first said that, but I think it's a helpful kind of catchy way of explaining what is a really important concept, which is that a no is not the end of the journey. It's just the start of one, and it's a start of potentially a new one than you envisioned. But that's not going to make it any more or less meaningful. It's just that you have clarity on what isn't working, right? I knew that universities weren't necessarily interested in my youthful ambition, and so yet exactly right. So it was a redirection. Yeah. I had to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, so that wasn't working. Now what will? Right. So as long as you kind of continue with this, I don't know, dogged determination, right? It's helpful in getting a no, being rejected, losing, I guess, if we're going with the sports analogy here, right? Is an important lesson. I'm a big fan of clarity. I always tell my clients, don't go for the yes, go for the clarity. So it's when you go into a conversation, don't focus all your energy on getting exactly what you want. What you want might not sound in that moment like you're getting that, right? If you get a no, for example, you're going up with all your hopes and dreams about a certain promotion or something like that, and you're getting full fat no straight up, right? That might hurt in the moment. It might be painful in that moment, but actually the clarity that what you want, your ambitions can't be, or can't come to fruition, right? In this particular context, in this particular pond, in this particular company, just is a redirection of, okay, this isn't working. We've got clarity on that. Now I have mental brain space to figure out, my next plan, or like the next best step that I can take. And then it's always one of those, this is like American movie type stuff, right? Where looking back, it's like the best thing that ever happened to you. Yeah. The number of clients who come to me and say, how, they basically kicked me when I was already down, or, when they say no to XYZ, right? How I really struggled with that. Look at me now, right? Yeah, it's always sort of the hero story of like, it is so much better on the other side. So rejection or a no or a loss, right? What might feel or seem like that in a moment, it can be an absolute massive win. Just my company is I guess the how should I say it, is a good example of that, because the compound effect, the compound impact that I'm having now through the way that my business is set up versus what I was first envisioning is huge. It's so much bigger now than it could have been if I had followed that first strategy. So that's look who's laughing now, Maastricht University. No, I'm kidding. They're wonderful.
Have her back.
We'll get there some way. We will. Yeah.
I wanted to touch on a little bit about negotiation. So I actually studied a negotiation, not in the same way you did, and not to the same level you did, but I studied at business school, and I loved studying negotiation. And I think a couple of the things I was interested to sort of ask you about was, one in particular is the preparation, because I think what frustrates me most about just winning generally, and people thinking about winning, is when you watch, for example, a sports team, when you're a hardcore football fan, let's say, and you watch your team on the TV and they lose 1-0, and then you break it down, you're like, oh, why did they do that? And you're sort of like, you've got all these opinions about why they lost that game. I'm lucky enough to have played it at quite a good level in sport, quite a competitive level. And what nobody who hasn't done that forget or remembers is all of the work and preparation and pre-planning and coaching teams and nutritional teams. At the top level of sport, there's so much work going into that win or loss at the end of the day, the big day. And there's so much preparation that's happening on individual basis with team sport as well, individual basis and team basis. And I think it's fascinating to me when people think about negotiations. I think some people may look at what you do and just see, oh, well, so she's just teaching women how to walk into a room and put themselves forward and just say, I want more, and it's not that at all. I hope it's not that at all. In the end, it's partly that, but it's so much preparation around what do you need to do to achieve this win? So I was wondering if I could ask you like a little bit. I heard you say the great expression data not drama, but I wondered if you could talk around that, like talk around your thoughts on preparation and how you encourage people to prepare, and in what ways you see people being able to better prepare themselves for things.
I mean, you're hitting on such an important point. I think there's a distinct difference between sports and preparation, at a professional level, right? And preparation for teams, for individual sports people to get ready for whatever important, match thing they've got on. And what my experience is how people prepare for their own negotiations. And by people, I'm actively including men, but my experience is obviously more with women. But that is the opposite of what you were describing, which is that they're woefully underprepared.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm embarrassed on their behalf. And I am a person who's a big fan of winging it. I do this most of the time with most things in my life. But the one of the things I do prepare for I have prepared for in my life, is the negotiations that I've done, both on behalf of my clients as a lawyer, but then you're kind of like professionally, like this is what you get paid to do, right? But also my own negotiations, career negotiations, and that is what I recommend everyone to do, is prepare for it, which sounds overly simplistic and kind of like I'm taking the piss. Until you know how many people don't prepare. And the reason why they don't prepare, this is my theory, is that they're simply so fearful of the entire concept of doing it, that the idea of mentally sort of like exposing themselves to the situation proactively by role playing it or practicing, or even doing, taking steps in researching where they should be and all of that, it's so mentally taxing, it's so like demanding, that they rather not do it and kind of tell themselves, I'm just going to go in and just see what happens, right? I'm just going to, and kind of really downplay the importance of the negotiation, really downplay their own, kind of emotional investment in it, because the idea of going through preparation is just too much basically for them, right? So it starts with the decision, I'm going to care about this. It starts, again, it sounds very simple, but that's a huge step for a lot of women, especially, right, who don't negotiate. 93% of women don't negotiate their salary offers. So just saying to yourself, I am going to take this seriously, and I will, I'll take the following steps, right, and then follow up on them and actually do them, is really important. And when it comes, I mean, if this is a practical question, right, of what do you do in order to prepare for your career negotiation, then I would say bring the data, right? So what is the data? So again, the number of women who come to me and say, I ask them, so you feel you're underpaid. Tell me more about that. And it's like, well, my cousin's nephew's dog's sister is being paid more, right? Or something like that. And like, it's not doing it for me. You've not convinced me, right? If you were telling me this anecdote as your boss, right? I just sit there and go, I'm not interested in your dog's auntie sister's dog, right? It whatever. So tell me the data, find out, do your research, right? What are people in your company, in your industry, in the type of role that you have, what are they making? What is the range where they should be on? And how do you compare to them? Yeah. And you might find that you are woefully underpaid, right? You're not even on the range. That happens a lot. They're not even in the range, right? Or it might be that actually it's not too bad, which is also very useful information, right? Yeah. Because again, clarity on that mental frustration and resentment and unhappiness that you're bringing, actually it isn't necessary, right? Or so do your research. Now we're talking salary, right? So do your research on that, and there's lots of data out there, lots of sort of aggregate sources that combine, Glassdoor and those kind of things. LinkedIn now has a calculator for salaries, etc. And talk to as many people as you can and ask them indirectly, this is the research that I've done, or these are the outcomes, these are the results that I know. Does this sound right to you, right? Rather than saying, what are you making? because that puts people on the spot and they don't like it, British or not, right? So make it indirect, but have the conversation. You know what I'm talking about, huh? Yeah. So have the conversation with as many people as you can, right? Get as many data points as you can, and then bring that to your boss rather than just one, or two or three people. When it comes to, then we're talking about goals again, right? The importance of goals. What another really important point is figuring out, what is it really that I want? What do I truly want? What's that dot on the horizon, right, that I'm working towards, so that you can figure out, what do I need to get out of the conversation now? So to make that kind of abstract concept a little bit more clear, if you are working towards, right, if you visualize, if you're looking at yourself, 65 years old, sitting on your veranda, a little blanket over your knees, looking back at your career, right? What do you want to see there? What's the picture that, what do you want to have achieved? Then you can figure out, okay, where am I today and how far removed am I of that picture, right? What do I need to do in order to get closer to that goal? And then what are the steps there? And so sometimes, that exercise helps, can help a lot in asking for the right things. So when people say, I want to be paid more money, is that because you are underpaid compared to your peers, and that makes you feel undervalued and not respected, and they're not seeing what your potential? Is it because you want to do a training that costs X amount of euros, francs, whatever country we're in, right? And you're going to need that. Is it what are the reasons for that? So that you can ask for the right thing, right? So rather than, if it's the training, for example, rather than asking then for more money, well, you can start there. But if that doesn't work, right, you can see if there's budget in some other kitty, right? If there's other ways in which you can get that training, or if it's about feeling undervalued, could you make a step in your title and in your responsibilities, or do some kind of stretch project that, where you feel like you're being challenged again and seen and respected for the value that you bring? So it's get clear on what is it that you're trying to achieve, so that you can figure out what are the real interests here, to bring some negotiation jargon. And so then that way you can move towards the goal that, you can have the right conversation to move towards the goal that truly means something, rather than ending up with, I don't know, 20K more and just going, wait, what? I still have that stupid title and they're still not taking me seriously. Right? And so it's
back to your clarity point. I think having the clarity in your own mind, what is it you want? Because it's so important to understand the different ways in which you can get there. Of course, salary is a unit of worth. It does make people feel valued, and it's a very important thing. But there are a lot of other factors, especially with jobs, that come into play. Like how much holiday time do you get? How much flexibility do you get? Do you get to work from home, or do you get to, these are things which may be relevant or not in your negotiation. I think that's a really, really good point. Wies, I'm very conscious of time. I know I saw you glance, and I'm glancing because I know you've got a hard stop in 5 minutes. So I'm going to let you, I really wanted to hear about your brag book as well, because I love that idea. But I don't know if you can sum up your brag book in 1 minute before we finish, but otherwise I'll
show you my current one.
Oh, wow. You've got it there. So quickly explain what the brag book is, because I've just given
the brag book is my favorite thing. Okay, sorry. The brag book, or the Yay journal, as I used to call it, but it's not as catchy a title, is basically a little notebook, or as big as little as you want it for. The other, here, can I show you?
Yeah.
Look at that corner on the top there. Those are my other brag books. Some of the other brag books. I told you I was moving, right? So I found them all and put them all in one place, or mostly. Anyway, so what it is, I've been doing this for years, right? What it is a notebook that you have with you, ideally at all times, in which you write down all of the things you kicked ass at that day. Or if you do it in the morning, like I do, first thing in the morning, then what you did yesterday, right? So it's compliments that you receive of other people, ideally as verbatim as they have reached you, right? It is things that you knew you did well. It is things that you remember you did well 25 years ago, right? But it is a way of consistently focusing on what is good and what you are doing well, to retrain your brain to focus on those things rather than on all the things you suck at, because there's undoubtedly enough of that. But our brains are wired, right, historically, to focus on all the things that are dangerous and bad and that we should improve, which has been great, right? That's why humanity has gotten to this place. But it's not really working for us on a daily basis, at least not when it comes to, telling the world, communicating your worth and your value. Because if you don't believe, right, because your brain focuses so much on negative, if you don't believe that you're worth something, it's going to be really difficult to convince other people of that. So what the brag book does, or what it allows you to do, is to very consciously and intentionally retrain your brain to focus on all the good things in your life. So write in it every day, couple things, read in it every day, and see your life transformed. And I feel like this entire podcast, I sound like a fairly simple person.
I don't think you do at all.
And really,
No,
well, everything I'm like,
common sense,
obvious.
Common sense maybe, but common sense is only common sense. Common sense is only common sense when you hear it and you realize it.
I'll take common sense. It is a very simple way, but a very powerful way to bring in more confidence in yourself, and to also bring in more good. Because as your brain focuses on, and as you go through your day, right, your brain starts to focus on all the things you do well, and so it starts to do more things well. It is weird. It is very cool and very weird.
Well, I absolutely love it, and I love that we're going to end on that. And I'm 1 minute away from your next meeting. So thank you so much, Wies. I really, really appreciate your time. I really enjoyed that conversation. And I do hope at some point I'll get to talk to you again, and we can go into some more detail on brag books and things. But I wish you all the very best with Win. I hope I'll leave links and things below, or wherever I can, to make sure that your voice gets out there, and people come and check you out. And yeah, if you're a woman and you're looking for some help, and you're looking for some guidance, Wies is the person you need to talk to, for sure. So thank you so much, Wies.
Nick.
Right,
thank you so much for having me and letting me rant for this platform. It's been really great catching up with you this way. So really, really thank you, and best of luck with this podcast. I'll be following. I'm very excited.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Wies. Have a good day. Bye.
Toodles. Bye.